So hello everyone, my name is Phil and I will be hosting today's webinar. As what we mentioned, Hugo will not be joining us tonight as he is still in Europe and I believe it's 2 a.m. now there. So welcome to today's webinar. We have entitled it, How I Scaled from 0 to 25 Properties in 4 Years. Our guest speaker for tonight is a friend of Hugo, a successful investor, and you may know her as well. So she is a book author. Her book is titled Diaries of a Female Real Estate Investor. She is a co-founder of the We Win LLC and is the current president of the We Win Foundation. So everyone, let's welcome and allow me to welcome to you Miss Ali, Miss Farrah Ali. So Farrah, the floor is yours now.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody see and hear me okay? I just want to make sure that before I start, because I don't really use this platform for GoToMeeting. Phil, if you can confirm that you can hear me and see me.
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Okay, all right, just making sure. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you guys have joined. I hope that you find this presentation helpful. I'm basically just going to kind of talk a little bit about myself, my story, how I scaled up, and then we will open it up to questions from there. Like Phil said, my name is Farrah, and I started real estate investing in 2014. That's when I first took the education, and then I started working on my properties. I got my first property in 2014. Since then, right now, as of now, I've acquired 37 rental properties. I've done about 6 flips and wholesaled about 21 deals throughout the past 7 years. And then what after kind of like seeing the success around us, me and a friend of mine, attorney Gina Diaz, we both kind of opened up a We Win LLC, which is a platform, an organization that helps with inspiring and educating, women, but mainly women. We did it with the intention of women, but men have also expressed interest, so we let them into our seminars as well, to kind of encourage them to get into real estate investing, because we know that it can be very intimidating for people who are newer, or usually it's been in a male-dominated field, so it's so for women as well. But we did that, and then I also have a non-for-profit called We Win Foundation. That we started kind of to help the community. When COVID struck, we were like, okay, well, what can we do to help our communities that we invest in? So we do food drives, we did turkey drive during the Thanksgiving. We've done toy drives during the winter, and we're doing a back to school drive at the end of this month. So if you guys are interested, you could, volunteering or being a part of it, you can always go to our website, which is mywewinfoundation.org. But that's kind of the stuff that I've been able to do, all because of real estate investing. I currently do still work 1 day a week in my actual career. So for the past 20 years, I've been doing insurance underwriting. I'm an underwriting manager, and I kind of started that, worked my way up into that field, started in 2001, and now I'm at a point where, last year actually I wanted to give my notice to kind of quit, but then they're like, hey, if you can do part-time. So I decided to do part-time because I had more than enough income to supplement me. And then nowadays I'm so crazy busy that I can only commit to like a day or so a week. And eventually I'm sure that, that'll soon I'll have to just quit. But I'm allowed to do that because of all the rentals that I've been able to acquire in the past 7 years. And it took me about 4 years total to get to the 25, which was my original goal, so that I can have, enough cash flow to retire early. So that's kind of like my, overall picture of what's going on. But I do want to talk a little bit about how I got started, and then talk a little bit about my properties as well. So I started, like I said, in 2014, and when I started real estate, I had absolutely no experience at all. I was in a situation, which I recognize some of you in here, where you might know that, I went through a divorce, and when I had separated before the divorce, I had to actually, I had left with absolutely like nothing, just few pairs of clothing, and and then my kids. So I walked into an empty house and had to figure out how to build up again. And so, I had to buy new furniture, beds, all of that. I had a decent job, so I was in the underwriting field. And, but that was only enough for the day-to-day expenses. Like I would know, as soon as my paycheck came, I had all these bills to pay. And then with me completely supporting the kids on my own, everything just kind of, it's kind of, in my account would have like $10 left. I'd be like, what happened? I worked so hard this week and it's all gone. So I'm like, I've got to figure something out, because I know that as the kids get older, and I have two kids, two boys, and I knew as they get older, the expenses were going to get more. And I wanted to also make sure that they were able to do the activities that kids that had, two parents or could afford that do, whether it was like taekwondo or whatever they wanted to do. So then I'm like, I started researching online. I'm like, well, how do I make more money? And at first, before I did that, I'm like, maybe I should just go back to school, because I had not finished school at all. And I'm like, okay, well, I probably, I have this great job, but maybe if I get my degree and my MBA, that maybe it'll pay me a lot more. So I went back and I finished my undergrad first, because I had like 2 years left of that. And then I went and did my MBA right after that. And I graduated in 2013 and had my master's. So I take my, my degree, and I'm like, hey, to my boss, like I have an MBA now, and they're all really excited. And so, yes, they gave me an increase in pay, but it was like 15%, which I was really, really grateful for. But in my mind, for some reason, I had thought like when you have an MBA, you're supposed to get this huge increase. So what happened was that was great, but again, I was getting into that same situation where the money would just be gone from my account after I had all the expenses. So then I'm like, okay, I'm like, what do I do now? So I started Googling like how to create more wealth. And anything that I really, like any website or anything I went to, kind of all geared towards real estate. And I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. I see one common, thread here where everybody talks about building wealth in real estate. So the first book I personally read that had to do with real estate was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was really cool because it got me like into the right mindset of thinking, of an investor versus an employee and an entrepreneur. So once I got that in my head, I'm like, okay, well, what's the next step? And so one of the things that they had suggested was to go to your local meetup group or any sort of real estate group that's local to you. And that's the next thing that I did. So I went and I ended up going to a seminar, which was like a three-day seminar for rentals, wholesales, and flips. At that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I get into real estate and I'm going to make all this money. So I got there and I was super impressed by the guy who was on there. His name was Andrew Holmes. He was teaching, and I was like, well, this is something I feel that I can do, because he talked about, you could do this even if you have a full-time job. You could do this if you have no money. Obviously, that no money really struck a chord with me, because I'm like, well, I don't have any money. I just, have my job. I have no savings to invest, $10,000, $20,000 into a property that I thought I would have to do in order to acquire it. So once I actually joined his course, I learned how to acquire property with no money. I figured out how to structure the deal. So the first thing that I think that is really important that everybody does is, you're jumping in and you're listening, but you also need to evaluate your current situation. So for me, I had a full-time job, so I didn't have that so much time to invest. I didn't have the money, so that's an area where that was a challenge for me. However, in this program, they introduced how you can get 100% funding for purchase and for rehab. And I was like, wow, that means I really don't have to bring much to the table. So I took the classes, and then from there, I actually got my first property within a month of starting to learn all of this. And the 100% financing worked out well because as they'll give you 100% financing, as private money lenders will, as long as the deal works. So my very first property that I got was in the city of Lyons, Illinois. It's like a small little suburb. It's near Hillside. It's, I don't know, I'm not really good at directions, but it's somewhere on the way to Chicago. Well, not on the way to Chicago. Maybe somebody else can help me out. But anyways, it's in Lyons, Illinois. And so it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home that was brick. And I had actually saw it online. It was an online auction. So I went and I couldn't get into the house because it was an auction property, and those, they don't let you, you can't go in because there could be people living in there. So what I did was I kind of like peeked through the window. I saw the outside structure, so I knew from the outside that I really didn't need much work. The roof looked fine to me. It was a brick home that didn't seem like any tuck pointing. So everything from the exterior, besides the landscaping, was pretty good. So I knew that we really didn't have any of those exterior costs. So now I had to figure out, like, okay, so how am I going to gauge the interior? And usually an interior, depending on the square foot of the house, but for like a 1,000 square foot house, I'd usually estimate between 20, 25 to 30,000 on an interior of a house. So that could, when I peeked in, I saw that there was hardwood floors. So with the hardwood floor, I knew I didn't have to install new flooring. I could just refinish the floors for much cheaper than getting new ones installed. So I kind of had that in my mind. I looked around the windows were pretty solid. And then from there, it was paint. I couldn't tell the HVAC, so I kind of kept that number in mind. I allotted for between, four to 5,000 for HVAC in case I needed to install a new one. Now I do know that somebody wasn't living there exactly at the time, but they had been living there a week before, because I could tell by looking inside the house that looked like there was activity going on there. They had all their stuff there. And so usually when people are living in a home, the electricity is probably working okay. The plumbing is probably working somewhat okay. So I kind of gauged, and I'm like, you know what, it looks like this is going to be a $20,000 rehab. So I took that number and I worked backwards. So that property I acquired for $75, and I put about $20,000 into it, and that's $95,000, and let's just say another $5,000 for financing and any other carrying costs, so $100,000 or so all in. And that property actually appraised for, I believe, in the 140s, like 145, 146, something like that. So, and I remember, like, I was super excited when it appraised for that amount, because I didn't have any money stuck in that deal. And I had to be really, really particular with my first couple of deals, because I couldn't have any money stuck over, because I didn't really have any money to have invested in the deal. So when I rented it out and then I got it refied, they were able to pay my private money lender back completely in full. And now I was ready for my next property. So so that's kind of like how I got started. And then from there, I had done like a goal planning session, and my goal at first was 5 properties. If I got 5 properties, I was like, wow, I got 5 properties. Like, this is my goal. Because I felt like if I had 5 fully paid off properties, that could probably, take that income and replace it with partially replace it with my full-time income. So my second property, actually, it took me a while to acquire. I guess, sometimes they say beginner's luck. So for me, I got that first property pretty quick. The second property, I really struggled for about 9 months or so, where I would put in offers, and they would either get outbid by somebody. I would get outbid by somebody else, or I put in an offer, it got accepted, and then I did my inspection, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that came up that I wasn't prepared for, so my rehab costs went up. So then I had to drop the deal. So after kind of going back and forth for 9 months, trying to get a deal, I finally, got my second property, which was also in Lyons. And that property I actually purchased it for, I think, in the 50s, either 50 or 55,000. It's been like 6 or 7 years, so I can't exactly remember. And that one I put 30 or 35 into it, and that one appraised for in the 130s or 140s as well. So at the time, I couldn't, because I didn't have so much of, because I didn't have the education and the money, like I couldn't make, so when you get a private money lender, you should be making interest payments at least once a month, right? So you have your cost, your living cost, right, that your day-to-day cost, but then you also have to pay an interest payment, and let's just say that interest payment is $1,000. So for the first 2 or 3, I couldn't do more than one property at a time because of that interest payment that I had going on. But once I did my third property and I started getting reserves into, because now I'm getting rental income, right? And I'm taking that $500 a month cash flow that I'm getting every single month from these couple of properties, now I have a little bit of a reserves to play with. So then when I did my third deal, which was year number 2, when I started doing my third deal, I actually got 2 at a time, and I was able to then scale up from there. So for like people who haven't or who are newer investors, I would say, don't try to do 5 at once, because the mistakes that you'll make on your first one, they won't carry over to your next properties, right? So you got to do what you can handle. So then from there, like year 4, year 5, year 6, and even into year 7, I've been doing between 10 to 12 deals every single year. Some of them I actually ended up wholesaling and then or flipping, just because there's been times where I have had too many properties on my plate, and I'm like, okay, well, I have 7 going on right now. I just can't take any more because I'm still working full time, right? And I just remember being very, very overwhelmed, and I kept getting these properties under contract, and then I kept dropping them because I was like, I can't handle them. But then I realized, well, instead of dropping these properties, why don't I just wholesale them to other investors? So what I started to do is, as I got them, I would add a little bit of fee, whatever makes sense, right? So I always work backwards. I always start with what I think the ARV is, and you get the ARV. ARV is the after repair value. So you get the ARV by doing comps. So you want to do look to see what properties got sold in that area, like usually in a mile or 2 vicinity. Same type of, if it's a brick, you got to look at brick properties and figure out, what they're worth or what they sold for. If it's a 2-bedroom, you don't use a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house to compare what it sold for. You want to use like type of comp. So then I looked at a couple properties, and then, I do the comps first, and then from there, you're like, okay, you have to know, when you're in a wholesale, you have to know your numbers as an investor, because you don't want to keep getting denied, right? So you look at what it's worth, all fixed stuff, and then you need to look at what the rehab numbers are. So what you do is, when you estimate the rehab, you work backwards, and then let's just say the rehab, it's 140 is the purchase, or sorry, the ARV, and 20,000 is the rehab. So now you have to work backwards. So in that case, an investor usually wants 20 to 25% equity in their properties. So is when you factor that in, then in that scenario, you'd be like, okay, let's just say I have the property under contract for 70,000. In that case, I can put a $10,000 wholesale fee on it and wholesale it to an investor. So those are some of the strategies that I used, because I couldn't take too many properties on at once, and that was a nice chunk of change with wholesaling. So I used that kind of to have my play money, and then I also did a couple flips. So in 2016, there was a property that I actually got in Bellwood, and at that time, as soon as I got it under contract, the place that I was employed, they let me go, and so I didn't have a job any longer. And that was still new. Like at the time, I think I only had 4 or 5 properties, and so I really, really needed that income from my job, and I was, in a situation where I was like, what am I going to do? And so I couldn't there's two problems. One was I was doing residential refis at the time. So when you don't have a job, a W-2, they won't let you do residential refis. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't do a refi if I decide to keep this property. The other thing was I was worried that, you know, I wasn't going to have, I had got somewhat of a severance, but I wasn't sure if I was going to find a job quick enough because my job, the field was so specialized. So what I decided to do was, instead of renting that property and keeping it as a rental, I flipped it. And with that, I remember it was my very, very first flip, and there was a lot of mistakes that I had actually made. I had partnered up with somebody who wasn't as experienced. So I thought because I was doing rentals that I wasn't experienced in flips. So I'm like, okay, let me just get a partner who knows how to do rehabs. And so when I did when I got the partner, I also realized later that they weren't as experienced. So then what happened was that we didn't end up making as much profit, but I'm still grateful because I think I made, I believe, 11 grand or so profit. And it wasn't like I lost any money, but that 11 grand really held me over during that time period where I could not find a job because, again, the field was so specialized. So that held me over. So I kind of changed up my strategy based on, just the situations that were kind of going on in my life. But, you know, I suggest that for people, what they need to do is, you know, you have to figure out, like when I first started, I wanted to do 5 properties. But as I kept doing them, I'm like, how much money do you need to replace your income? So after I got those 5, I really started thinking, and my magic number was 25, because what I wanted to do was, for every rental property that you have, you approximately, the goal should be to have between $400 or average $500 a month cash flow on each one. So let's just say that you have 25 properties. I think that equates to about $12,500, $13,000 in net cash flow, which means after the mortgage is paid, after all the insurance is paid, and I keep a little bit of reserves for any type of emergency calls or anything that happens, maintenance calls. So if you can get $400 to $500 a month net cash flow, which is totally, totally possible, and you can then just scale up and grow your portfolio to whatever that number may be, now you don't have, now you have options, right? You don't have to work. So you have to figure out, like for me, my magic number is I want $25,000 a month coming in net. That's my actual goal, right? So now, does that mean that that's kind of like my lifestyle goal, right? It's not that I need $25,000 to live off of, but I want the nicer cars. I want to be able to take my kids anywhere out in the world, all of that. So you have to figure out how many properties do you need. So I think that if you set a goal and set a goal now, like how many properties you need in order to live the lifestyle you want, that it really does, in my opinion, in my experience, really does help. I don't know, something is thrown out there with your goal, whatever you want to call it, the universe, whatever it is, that your goal is there, and you somehow reach that goal. But you got to keep that goal in mind, and you have to have a logical reason for your goal, right? So be like, okay, don't just say I want to do 50 properties, because then parts of your mind will be like, okay, 50 properties, yeah, that's unattainable. So have your long-term goal, like your goal in mind where you want to get to, but then make like short milestones to get to your goal. So the reason why I said that was because that's kind of how, after I got my 5 properties, that's how I ended up acquiring my properties, is I had that goal in mind. And as I kept getting my properties, I would cross it off my list. And then I eventually, until I attained that goal. Now, after 25 properties, I couldn't stop. For some reason, it gets really addicting. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to, after 25, I'm going to relax. But that didn't really happen because I got a couple other ones in areas that I really, really couldn't I couldn't give them up. So there was one in Oak Lawn that was a beautiful property, and it was a great location, and I was like, okay, I gotta keep this one. And then another one came up. I'm like, I gotta keep this one. And then a couple months ago, I got a 7-property portfolio. So there was this lady, her husband passed away, and she actually a wholesaler brought her to me, and the husband passed away, and she didn't really want anything to do with properties. She was not the type that wanted to deal with tenants or anything like that. So she said, hey, I know I'm giving these at a discounted price. I just want cash for them, and I have 7 properties all at once, and they're all in Calumet City. So originally, I didn't invest in Calumet City because I had this thing in my mind that Calumet City is not an area that I want to invest in, because I do invest in certain pockets, like certain areas, which I call B and C areas. And so Calumet City, I wasn't sure. And so my initial thing is I'll just probably wholesale these properties or give them away. And when I actually drove by the areas that they were in, it was a nice area, quiet, brick homes, and I was like, wow, this is not bad as I thought. I met all the tenants. All of the tenants were already in those properties, and they were paying. They were on time. So I basically acquired a 7-property portfolio a couple months ago with tenants in it, and I didn't have to do anything. And I have probably in each property, if $40,000 to $50,000 equity without doing anything to that property, because again, she just wanted to get rid of them as fast as she could, and I think she wanted to move out of state, so she knew she was selling them at a good deal. So when you start investing and you start getting into the real estate game, and you keep yourself, if you really, really want to do this, you have to make real estate kind of like your, second hobby or your hobby, that type of thing. So when you do that, people will start just reaching out to you and being like, hey, wholesalers be like, hey, I saw that you bought this property in this area. I have one 2 blocks down. Do you want to buy it? Because they have access to records, of when you buy properties cash, somehow you get on some list of being a cash buyer. And it's not that I actually use my own cash ever to buy any properties. I've always used a private money lender, but in the records it shows as cash. So people will contact me and be like, hey, I saw that you bought this property cash, last year. It's 2 blocks down. Would you be interested in this one? And I'd be like, absolutely, yes. And I'd go running over there and looking at the property, and I've gotten a couple of deals just that way. But you gotta get yourself out there, and you have to network a lot. You gotta network by going to meetings. If I know due to COVID, it's more difficult, but if you can get out there, get out there. Listen to as many podcasts and things that you can. Go on Facebook, LinkedIn, real estate groups, and start joining those, because you do have people that will wholesale properties or are looking to wholesale, because even though they can probably hold those properties or flip them because they don't, maybe whatever reason they have, they decide to wholesale them, and that's an opportunity for you as an investor. So and then from here now, for me, I am going to focus on duplexes. So a bunch of us are going out to Florida, and we're going to do new construction in Florida, and near the Tampa area, not exactly in Tampa, but near the Tampa area. We're going to be building duplexes, and I'm really, really looking forward to that, because that's kind of like a new venture in the real estate world. I have a lot of experience when it comes to rehabbing existing homes, and and then renting them out and refinancing them. But now I'm gonna shift a little bit and go into Florida and do some new construction and see how that goes. My plan is to build anywhere between 18 to 36 duplexes, and I currently have 2 pieces of land under contract, and 2 I've already closed on. So it's really exciting for me. And so I guess I probably won't really be retiring with real estate at all, because it's actually exciting once you get into it. You know, it's a lot of hard work, for sure, but it's definitely something that I think that anybody, doesn't matter what situation you're in, I don't care if you have the worst credit or have no money or whatever the case is, that everybody starts somewhere and you can get to it. You might take a little bit longer than maybe the average person, but that's okay. But once you start, you can definitely get there. It doesn't matter, like I said, any situation. I've seen people who, you know, had 500 credit scores that are now doing deals, and your strategy can be different. Maybe you can start with flips because you don't have necessarily the score to refi, or there are some companies, commercial lenders, who will take lower credit scores. So there's a lot out there to learn, but it's definitely you know, kind of available to everybody. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about a couple of my properties and the numbers, so that you guys can kind of understand some of the areas that I invest in, my purchase prices, what my rehab numbers have been, what the ARVs come in at, and kind of walk through that. And then after that, we'll, you know, kind of open it up for any questions. So most of my properties, so out of the 37 properties that I have, there's one that I have that's a 2-unit, and everything else is a single family home. So I generally buy properties in the range of between 50, I think the most I spent on a property is 120,000. So for example, I bought a property, I like Allsip a lot. You know, Allsip is a very nice area to do rentals in. Most of the properties there are, you know, nice 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom single family homes that are brick. I prefer brick, but I have some frame as well. So if the numbers work, guys, just do it. Don't look too much into what, whether it's a brick or frame, a house is a house. So I bought a property in Allsip for about 120, I want to say. This was about a couple years ago. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and I rehabbed it for about 30,000. So if you take 120 plus 30, that's 150. I had about $10,000 in finance costs, holding costs. When I say holding costs, what I mean by holding costs is your utilities. Someone's got to be paying utilities while the property is being rehabbed, right? So that's the owner. So you have your electric, your gas, all of those utilities. Those are your holding costs. Another holding cost is taxes. So while you own the property, you're going to be owning the paying the taxes. Then you have, you know, any other costs, that your grass cutting or your snow, all that. So those costs, you know, you'll have to factor into. So those were $10,000 were my holding and finance costs. And what I mean by finance costs, it means the payments that I'm making to the lender that I borrowed the cash from. Right. So 120 is a purchase, another 30 in rehab, and 10,000 in holding costs. That's $160,000. That property appraised for $220,000. After I got it all fixed up, made it look really nice, and then a lot of the lenders require you to actually have a lease in place first. So I had the property rented for $1,700 a month, and my cash flow on that property is about $500,000. So that's one example of a property. In that property, because it appraised for higher, I was able to take out all the refinance it and pay the lender back the cash. Now there was one property where the rehab went a little bit over, and this was in Lyons. Actually, what happened with this property was this third property that I got in Lyons. So I go in, I get the rehab done, right? And that the village of Lyons they are very particular when it comes to rehabs. You have to make sure that you pull the proper permits. Like that's not a village that you ever want to mess with. So you pull, I pulled the permits. They actually required me to change the whole water line to the main. So that took about $11,000 to do. Well, first I hired a plumber, and I don't think he knew what he was doing. So, no, actually he didn't know what he was doing. He had to dig, right, to get to the line, and there was a lot of like rock. I guess parts of Lyons has rock, and You know, it takes a lot more to get to it. So he saw that and he's like, oh, I'm not going to do this work. And he kind of just like left. And so I'm like, okay, so now I'm like, I already paid him some money. So, but I didn't pay him the whole thing, thank God. But then I had to hire another one. So now I'm hiring this other one. I have to go get another new permit with this guy. And so he replaces the line. So that was $11,000. And finally the rehab's done. I'm all good. I go, you know, we go and get the inspection done. And the inspector comes in. He's like, oh, well, you know, I need you to open up this wall over here. And we were like, why? Like, he's like, because I remember coming here like a year and a half ago. And this was a bank-owned property. So the bank actually, you know, was REO. So they're the ones who sold it, I guess, whatever their foreclosure, whatever the case was. So they're like, but we haven't touched this wall. You know, all we did was paint it. He's like, yeah, but I remember a year and a half ago that this property had, there was termites, and I don't remember ever inspecting that. So like that completely shocked me because, you know, we didn't have any, I didn't know of any termites or anything like that. So he made us take out the wall, and yes, there actually was damage to termites in that area, which we had no clue. So I guess the bank, or whoever was charged at the bank, they put up the drywall and painted it to make it so that they could cover it. And so that was another added cost for me. So we had to, you know, remove all the damage, put new framing in, wood framing in, then re-drywall it, paint it, and all of that. And then finally that got approved. So that rehab took more than I thought. You know, it cost me about $10,000 more than I originally estimated. And so in that deal, it's still appraised for a good number, but I had like $10,000 invested in that deal or stuck in that deal that I wasn't expecting to be stuck. So, which I'm kind of glad that happened later on in my investing career, because if it happened in my first 2 or 3 properties, I probably would have been, you know, like, where am I going to get $10,000 from? That kind of thing. But that's why in the beginning, you don't go as fast if you don't have the experience. You kind of just do one, see how it goes, and then go from there. And then I'll talk about one of my other properties. You know, I've gotten a few actually in Evergreen Park, and there was this one property that I thought I got an amazing deal, which I did. It's still a really good deal. So from when you walked in, you know, I got the property for $100,000. I estimated the rehab cost to be $5,000, but when I walked into the property, everything was great. You don't need to change a thing. But I closed on it, and the mistake I made was that I probably should have gotten an inspector in there before I closed, before the attorney approval period. So what happens is when you get something under contract, you have 5 days to drop the contract. You can still give your earnest money in your 5 days, and you would get your earnest money back. And that attorney approval period can always be extended by your attorney. Let's just say you need to get an inspection, or you need more time for something, that can always get extended. That really protects your earnest money. So in that scenario, what I did was, I'm like, oh, this property is great. Like, you know, all I had to do was paint it, nothing else. And so I had estimated $5,000 rehab costs, and then I closed on the property, and then I got an inspector because there's something with the water. I'm like, you know what, let me just, you know, pay $300-$400 and get an inspector. So there was other stuff that came up, and it ended up costing me $7,000 or $8,000 more than I thought, because there was stuff that was behind the scenes that I just couldn't see from the eye, you know. And so the lesson I always learned was that, you know, a property may look like it's great, but make sure that you always get a inspector, because you want to make sure that you're estimating your rehab costs. Because what I would have done in that case was asked for a little bit more money from my private money lender, or I should have negotiated the price down a little bit more, because I now knew of other issues that, you know, that were not disclosed. Because when you're buying something as is, when it's labeled as is, then you're buying it as is. You can't go back and say, hey, you know, I found this, because it's as is. Unless it's some big foundation issue, as long as you bring it up before closing, you should be fine. But those are just kind of things to look out for. So, so those are some examples of my properties. I can now open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, if you want to know any details of where I invest or other strategies or anything like that, if anybody wants to ask, you're good to go. Nobody has questions?
Hi, Farrah. This is Phil. We actually have questions in the chat. Are you able to see it?
Oh, I'm not able to see it. Let's see. Maybe I am not looking at. Oh, there. I see it. Okay. Sorry. Go to webinars new for me. I'm used to Zoom. Scrolling down here. Okay, so Alberto, is the cash flow goal based on property or per door? So since I have single family homes, mostly it's based on property, but you could, if you're doing multifamily, then you do it per door. So for multifamily, it's hard to get $500 or $600 a month net cash flow per door. Usually they're 300 or less. But yeah, it's some you're gonna have 400, some you're gonna have 500, some you're gonna have 600. So at the end of the day, you got to calculate how much actual cash flow you're getting to get to your goal. So that might be a goal of 10 properties, 12 properties, 30 properties for somebody. But make sure you do your numbers right. And everybody has their own standards. So like mine is 400 to 500. Some people are okay with having 250 to 300 a month in cash flow because they're like, well, that's $250 or $350 that I never had before. And you know what? I got all this experience by doing this transaction. So, in the beginning, you might, don't be so picky because there's a lot to learn when you actually do a deal. So my philosophy is on a flip, even if you're going to make $12,000, $15,000, go ahead and do it if you know for sure that there's no major issues. If you're going to make $350, do it for the experience, and then from there just get, you can be more pickier with your deals.
Hello?
What are the good pockets? Yes.
Oh yes, this is Joe. I was just curious, with your properties, what do you anticipate typically when you are working on a medium, I guess light to medium rehab, the turnaround time?
The turnaround
is it
time,
4 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on a couple different things. Okay, so if it's the first time you're doing one, it's going to take a little bit longer because your contractor doesn't know the way you work. Like now, for me, like I have one contractor who pretty much does a lot of my stuff, so he knows exactly what paint color I want, exactly what flooring I want. Like what I do is whatever I do in any of my properties, I use the same colors throughout any of my rentals. All my rentals look the same, so that saves a lot of time because the contractor already knows what material to purchase. I'm not sitting there trying to tell him what to buy. So that's one factor. But usually I would say for mid-grade, for both exterior and interior, or are you just talking about interior?
I guess primarily interior, but I mean, if you have some exterior, that anything, I'd say light to medium. Is it typical? And I know it's hard to gauge, but is it typically like 8 weeks? From start to finish, where you can get a renter in there.
I would give it like 3 months. I would say because it also depends on like if you're doing stuff in the winter, and especially if it's exterior, right? Like you gotta wait, for the windows or the roof. You'll have to wait some time till the weather permits to do certain things. So it's kind of seasonality based, but I would say 3 months for a like $30,000 rehab, let's just say, is pretty good. Some people can get it done sooner. Some people take a lot longer. It also depends on what I've noticed in my experience is if you have a contractor who's doing other jobs at the same time, it takes longer. But if they're only focused on your job, then it goes a lot faster. It also depends on the contractor's experience as well. But yeah, generally I would say about 3 months. If you have to do like more rough work, like plumbing, electrical, it might take 4 or 5 months or so.
Okay. Okay.
So
Thank you.
hi, how are you? So talk about contractors. How do you generally find contractors, and how do you vet a contractor?
The best way to vet a contractor is, try to get one who you've worked with in the past. I would say that would be the number one way to go. If you can't do that, if you've asked around and you just don't seem to find anybody, I would say, um, like if you put it out there, whether you use Thumbtack. Sometimes what I do is the first 8 to 10 properties, I actually manage them myself. I didn't hire a contractor. I hired a plumber separately, an electrician separately, HVAC guy separately. I kind of manage my own projects just to save some money because I didn't want to spend $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000 paying a contractor to kind of manage everything. And I also wanted to learn, right? So until you do it yourself, you don't really learn. And then, if somebody quotes you, let's just say $10,000 for an HVAC unit, and that's not $10,000 because you've actually hired an HVAC person yourself, and that it costs generally between, $3,000 and $5,000 or $3,000 and $6,000, then, people will, they won't be able to get away with stuff like that. So as far as like finding them, they say, kind of go hang out at the Home Depot. I don't know. I would just say like go on sites like Thumbtack. I don't know about Craigslist. I've never tried that before. I've gotten people through Thumbtack, but then what you also want to do is look at the reviews. And I also look at, this sounds kind of strange, but I do like stalk my tenants on Facebook and anybody that I'm working on Facebook and see if I see anything crazy in there. Because if I do, then I kind of like tend to shy away of working with them. I know it sounds bad, but that's just kind of how it is when you don't know somebody at all. Kind of got to stalk them a little bit in different social media platforms. I also ask to see their previous work, pictures of their previous work. And I wouldn't just rely on pictures only. I would see if they can take you to something they're currently working on, because anybody can grab a picture from anywhere and say that they did it, right? But hey, do you have a project that you're currently working on that I can go visit? And I would say have face-to-face conversations. A lot of times I feel like most people will work well with each other. But what I've noticed is sometimes investors have, I don't know, expectations that are unrealistic, right? So what they'll do is when they have to go pay the contractor, they'll take 2-3 weeks to pay them. And what do you think that does to a contractor, right? Like if they've done their part, if they've done 30% of the job and you're supposed to pay them, you're supposed to pay them, then just pay them on time. Because if you're waiting 3 weeks, now they're not going to feel like wanting to work for you the same way that they would when they originally started. So, you kind of have to respect them as, they're also human, they're people, they're trying to do the best they can in most scenarios. Obviously, there's ones that will try to screw you, but in most cases, in my experience, it hasn't been that way. So if you treat them with respect, you pay them on time, you understand what they're, saying. A lot of times, newer investors, they don't understand what a contractor has to do or what an electrician has to do. Like, sometimes they'll have to open up a wall and fix something, and that will take more time and that will take more dollars. When you go, then they give you an estimate of a rehab, let's just say 30, but then as they're working and they find something, would you rather them hide it and be like, well, if they quoted me 30, I know this investor, they're not going to pay me my extra $2,000 because they're going to say, well, throw it in there. So they're not going to tell you that what they found. But if you have a good relationship with them, they're like, listen, I saw that this is not up to code, and the village might find out and they make you update it. So do you want to do it now while the wall is open? Just do it now. It'll be cheaper. So just do it, and yeah, it might take you a couple $1,000s more or whatever, but it's better to do it now than later on when the inspector comes in and, says, well, I didn't, get to inspect this, and I remember this being a certain way, that type of thing. So I think it goes both ways, honestly, but just network and you'll be able to find people and ask around.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the problem that I'm struggling with right now is that I'm pretty handy and I'm doing most of the work myself with my family.
Okay.
And that's not sustainable. And I'm trying to find contractors that can help us. I have 8 units and I'm working at 4 units right now. And I'm just, there's not enough time in the day, and I also work full time. So that's what I'm trying.
Yeah. No, just try to, I don't know if there's like meetup groups out there or not for investors or contractors and things like that. So Luckily, I'm a part of a group called Mastery where we have like, 600-700 investors all investing, and we all kind of share each other's resources. So it's been easier for us, for people that are part of that network, which I think Hugo is also a part of. Any other questions, or I can go through the ones in the chat. The multifamily I'm building, the duplex, yes, they're in Florida. What else is?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the last property you were talking about before you started taking questions, how old was the property? The
one in Evergreen Park, the one that I thought that was going to be easy.
Yes.
That one, that was 19, I think in the 70s, 1970 something. But the lady had already updated it pretty well.
Yes, that's surprising. It's not that old. And then the last question I had for you, I might have another one, but is when so you have 35 properties already.
Mm-hmm.
When and have you any of the properties that you bought, have you decided to sell that property, flip that property because you have a large amount of equity, or are you holding on to them because the rent makes sense, but to sell it right now, you're not getting enough equity back and enough cash back from the sale?
Well, I have more than enough equity in all of my properties. I can sell any of my properties and make good, between probably $30 to $100, $120,000 in some of these properties. But the point of keeping properties is because of the cash flow that you can depend on every single month, right? If I decide to sell that property, yeah, I may have $40,000 sitting in my bank account, but what is that $40,000 doing for me? It's not giving me $500 a month cash flow, but having it invested in a property gives me $500 a month cash flow. And I personally know that if I have $40,000 sitting in the bank account, you go look in that account 6 months later, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be gone because you have to use it for this. I don't know, expenses come out from somewhere, right? So when you know that it's invested somewhere, then you don't have that money to play with. It's not there, so you tend to, your patterns, your habits are a little bit different. So that's what I do. I'm like really big on trying to keep those properties so that I can get that cash flow, because I don't depend on that money to live off of. I have a separate income that I've been using for my full-time job, where that's what I was using. And that's the philosophy that everybody should have, is when you're growing, you should not be using your rental income. Try to find something else, whatever it may be, whether you go get a job, whether you do Uber or whatever, but use separate income for your day-to-day expenses. Let your portfolio grow for a little bit, and then you can decide what to do with that cash flow, whether you want to pay off those properties, that loan that you have, just keep paying the principal and pay it completely off, or you want to build and scale up to whatever number you want.
At what point would you use some of after you finish paying off the properties, you would then use that to,
that's paid off property.
Live off?
Whatever you want. Yeah, take that to buy a new car, new home, whatever you did, because now it's a paid off property, right? So now not only do you have equity, all this equity in that property, because you have, let's just say the house is worth $200,000, you have $200,000 worth of equity. Now you've got $1,000 a month coming in net cash flow because everything's paid off.
Yeah, one of the
goal. If you can get five paid off, that's $5,000 a month coming in.
Yeah, it's so true. And one of the mistakes that I did in the past was I would go in and I would refinance, and then I would refinance again, and then take out all the cash, and before you know it, the taxes go up, the insurance goes up, and yeah, the property's paying for itself, but your cash flow is gone, and and then the market turns and you're in trouble.
Yeah. And people have said, a lot of people say, like the taxes keep going up and stuff. And yes, taxes do, over time go up a little bit, but so are the rents. So, in a city like Lansing, where a lot of us invest in, you know, for a 3-bedroom, we're getting $1,700, $1,800 a month rent for a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 3-bedroom, 2 bath type of thing. So 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,600 easily, you know, rents over there. So it's so they're also going up, you know. It's kind of going hand in hand.
Yeah, it's important not to keep a tenant at the same rent for 10 years. So I understand.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own kind of philosophy. When we have, you know, I actually don't raise the rents on my tenants because as long as they're paying tenants, I'd rather not have them leave. So what I do is I just keep, because I have a fixed mortgage, right? So my mortgage is my mortgage. Yeah, the tax might fluctuate here and there, but it's not going to fluctuate by hundreds of dollars a month or anything like that. So I actually keep the rent the same, and my strategy is for good tenants, I keep them because if they go out and look somewhere else, let's just say I have them locked in at $1,500 a month, and market rent right now is $1,700. Well, when they're going to go out, they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to pay $1,700. I'm paying $1,500. I'm staying here. And when you don't have turnover, then it's more profitable for you because you don't have vacancy, right? Like even 1 month of vacancy, you lose $1,500 on.
Correct.
Like why would you do that when you have a tenant that's a great tenant? So you want to reward your good tenants.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Problem. Any other questions?
Yes, my name is Marlon. I just have a question. Is it better to wholesale or better to rehab?
Better to wholesale or rehab? It all depends on your strategy. So in some cases, you can make it, okay, so the question I'll ask you, let's just say you have a property and you can make $30,000 wholesaling it, or you can make $50,000 rehabbing it and flipping it. Which one would you choose? For me, I'd rather make the $30,000 because I have so much going on in my life that I'll make a quick 30 rather than holding something for 4, 5, 6 months and making 20,000 more, because that just frees up my time to do more stuff. But if you're in a situation where you really don't have much going on and you know, you're like, hey, I'm going to put my time and effort into this and I'd rather make 50 than 30, then, you know, then make the $50,000, you know. But for me, I'm like, if you could make a quick 30 and not having to touch the property, that's always, you know, something that's quicker, faster, and then you have more time to focus on maybe acquiring more. So it all depends. Now, if you can make $10,000 versus $50,000, I'll probably use the $50,000 route. So each deal has to be analyzed separately, and it has to be analyzed separately, and it has to be analyzed based on your particular situation too. So it's not something, it's a case by case. But I hope you understand kind of what I'm trying to get at.
I do understand I do understand to whereas depending on your situation, if you have enough time or whatever,
based on the situation.
if you're real busy.
Yeah, and the numbers. And if it's a cosmetic rehab that you think is going to take a month, then that might be worth it. But if it's a full gut rehab, you really want to put all the effort into it, because remember, in a full gut rehab, there's more chances of you overspending on a rehab because there's things that you would find that you didn't think that you would. So just keep that in mind, how much work you're putting into it.
Right, how much work compared to you just make you a quick, well, not really, well, compared to that, make you, like you said, a quick 30,000 as opposed to months and months of rehab making 50 or 60 or whatever. I got you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Farrah. This is Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Would you invest at this unpredictable market right now that we have ahead of us?
Oh, absolutely. I invest, doesn't matter if it's, you know, I always feel like there's opportunity everywhere. So, you know what they say, when everybody's running, you should invest. But, you know, the market hasn't, right now the market obviously is hot, right? And things are being overpriced. So you know, I've changed my strategy a little bit where I'm doing more off market or getting deals from wholesalers who are going after off market properties, because right now, if somebody lists something on the MLS, people are overpaying, and I'm not about to, you know, overpay for a property. You make money when you buy the property. So remember that when you purchase a property is where you make the money. So you want to buy a property at a discounted price. I'm still getting deals through MLS. you know, even some agents, because of, you know, once you get experience and you know what you're talking about and you're talking to an agent, they'd rather sometimes work, and these sellers and agents rather would work with somebody that knows what they're doing and that they know will close, rather than somebody who's gonna maybe use, you know, financing or just doesn't understand what they're doing. Because a lot of these as-is properties, they don't want people coming back and saying, well, you know, the inspection found this, or they found this, whatever. They don't want to deal with that, so they're okay taking $10,000 less for somebody who's experienced. So you just gotta make it for people to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm an agent, and I have a hard time to find something that makes sense for my stuff. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's still things out there. I've probably done more, you know, there's more deals during COVID than I have. And I think that, again, it's probably just because I'm kind of immersed into real estate. But there's definitely things still out there, for sure. You just have to be aggressive. You got to be educated, and you got to be aggressive. Aggressive in a nice way, not aggressive in a bad way.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Marie,
did you find your hard money lender in your group, Mastery?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so all of our private money lenders, there's numerous private money lenders in there, and you can use more than one at a time. Yeah, they're all from the Mastery Group. There are hard money loans out there, so private money is a little bit different than the hard money. Hard money, usually there's a bunch of companies that'll give you, like your fix and flip loans, they'll give you 90% purchase and 100% rehab. So you'll have to bring some to the table for your hard money loans, but the private money loans are 100% financing, so purchase and rehab, as long as the deal makes sense. So they'll evaluate your deal, and they know that, you know, it'll appraise for higher than, you know, what the purchase and rehab is. So they'll do their numbers too. So there's two different things. One's private money, and one's hard money. But
Thank you.
There's a ton of Sorry, go ahead.
The question I have is, since we're in Illinois, we have to be real estate brokers, correct?
I'm sorry for some reason.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Being in Illinois, we have to be Illinois brokers, correct? We have to be real estate brokers, correct?
In order to wholesale?
Yes.
Yeah, you do have to be like agent. The group changes. I hear like an echo.
I'm sorry.
So if you're consistently wholesale, you got to get a license, or maybe partner up with somebody that has a license.
Okay, I have another question also. So would it be easier, or would that be harder?
I'm sorry.
Somebody microphone is on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's still like noise in the background.
Okay, I'm gonna write it in the chat. Could you look in the chat and then answer it for me?
Maybe you could put your.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions while he's putting his question in the chat?
Hi, Farrah. This is Maria. I had a quick question. You mentioned about working with wholesalers. What's the best method to finding wholesalers that you can work with and obtain properties if you're not able to, you know, you don't have the experience in getting off-market deals on your own?
Sure. So if you go, I don't know if you have Facebook or not. If you go on Facebook and if you type in real estate groups in Chicago, you'll find like there'll be a couple there, like maybe 2 or 3 groups. Maybe there's even more because I haven't. I'm a part of 2 or 3 of them. But you want to join any real estate group in Chicago that you're a part of, because there's always wholesalers that are marketing in those groups.
Okay. And then what about, so if you're not in the Chicagoland area, if you're maybe like north, like in Wisconsin area
Oh
or
yeah, wherever
northern
you are.
Illinois?
Yeah, wherever you are, you want to go to your local groups, whether it's in person or virtual now or on LinkedIn, like your local groups, because that's where wholesalers usually come and start marketing their deals.
Okay. So
And
it's
then, yeah. And then,
so real estate groups in Chicago, for
yeah,
an example, or like real estate groups
yeah,
in Milwaukee or,
correct.
okay.
Wherever
Okay.
you want to purchase your properties.
Okay. And is it, how do you find, you know, as far as how do you identify which ones are providing good deals or not? Are they actually putting out their deals out there and then you're just kind of doing the research on the property that they put out?
Yeah, so what you'll notice is wholesalers will give you their numbers. They'll say, this is what the ARV is, the property is worth off except this is what the rehab cost is. Whatever they put, I would take it with a grain of salt because the numbers are all over the place. Like, just like anywhere, like some people know what they're doing and some people don't. And just because they say the property is worth, you know, $300,000 doesn't mean that it's worth $300,000. So you have to do your own due diligence. You have to do your own homework. You have to learn how to do comps yourself. If you don't have access to the MLS, you could use something called Redfin, where you know you can kind of gauge what the comps are on Zillow, Redfin, or you know if you have a friend that's an agent, maybe they could do comps for you. But you really do need to do your own homework. I would never just trust anybody, you know, blindly like that. And then if it makes sense, then you can always negotiate with the wholesaler and be like, hey, I know you said that you have these comps, but these comps are based on, you know, 3-bedroom and this is a 2-bedroom house. And my comps are, you know, $20,000 less. So is there room for negotiation?
Right. That's a good point. And, you know, depending on if you're identifying potential wholesalers to work with, if they're overinflating their comps
Yeah.
or their ARV, then it might be somebody you might not want to work with. So maybe I'm sure you've identified people that seem to have better, you know, more accurate ARVs
Yeah.
and comps.
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
sometimes it's not just them. It could be somebody that has a deal that they have. Like it could be a wholesale of a wholesale too. So that
Got it.
happens a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah. So as long as you know what you're doing, you'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you do a deal, how does a double close work? Okay, so double close, there's a simultaneous close and a double close. So the attorney that you hire, you need to make sure that you hire an attorney that knows what they're doing when it comes to wholesale. So there are deals where you're using somebody else's money, right? The end buyer's money. That all is when you put a deal under contract, you need to tell your attorney right away that this is a deal that is going to be wholesaled so that they're aware. If you're purchasing a property that's from a wholesaler, you also need to let your attorney know that this is a wholesale deal and that we're going to be using my funds or the buyer's funds to close the property, and that person in the middle, they're not using their funds, it's the buyer's funds. So they will set that up the right way. You know, there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes on a wholesale, so you really do want to hire an attorney that knows what they're doing when it comes to wholesale. And if people are out there telling you, if an attorney's out there telling you, well, you can't do this, this is impossible, wholesales are illegal, they're not illegal. They just need to be structured the right way. Any other questions? Phil, I don't know how long you wanted this to go. So you wanted to wrap up now?
Yeah, yeah, we can actually answer one more question.
Sure. We'll take one more
I have
question.
one more. Well,
Yes.
it's Marlon again. I got one more question. This regarding wholesaling. Do you have to be licensed to wholesale?
In the state of Illinois, you do have to be licensed to wholesale. You can do one wholesale deal without a license. And then what I would recommend is if you do want to wholesale, might as well get your license. Or like I said, maybe partner up with somebody that has a license. But I would not, you know, if you're going to be doing a bunch of wholesales, I'd rather you just get your license and keep 100% of the profits than partner with somebody just for their license. So that should be like a goal that you should start working on, is getting licensed if your plan is to wholesale. Yes, you can definitely negotiate the price with a wholesaler. I do it all the time. But in order for you to be successful at negotiating a price with the wholesaler, you got to know your numbers. So make sure that you are educated in doing your numbers. Sorry, Marlon, that was for a message that came up in the chat. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to me. Okay.
Yeah. And then
so pretty much this.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. All right. So pretty much you're saying really have to get licensed in order to start wholesale.
Yeah.
I mean, after that one wholesale.
If you haven't started yet and you're working on your first one, you could do one without getting licensed. But if you are if it's your goal to wholesale, then it all starts with your intention, and then what are you doing to work towards your goal, right? And one of the things is getting licensed. So I would suggest that if you're going to do more than one a year, that you should be licensed, or you should. Yeah, I mean it's the law. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you so much as well, Farrah, for answering the question. And
I did want to mention before we move it out to you, I did want to mention that I do have a book that I wrote called Diaries of a Female Real Estate Investor. It's on Amazon, and it kind of talks about my journey more in detail about how I got into real estate investing. Have some case studies in there as well for my properties. It's both educational and hopefully it'll help to motivate you and encourage you to start investing. So you guys are interested in that, it's on Amazon, called Diaries of a Female Real Estate Investor. It's not like a long book. It'll probably take you like 3 hours to read, but I think it'll be really, really helpful for anyone that's looking to get remotivated again, or trying to understand the numbers that I was talking about. All of that is in there. I have purchase price, rehabs, and all my properties, how I acquired it. I have myths and tips and all of that in there too. I think that would be helpful.
Okay, perfect. If they want to reach out to you, Farrah, how do we should do that? Or
okay, so I have a website. It's called farrahali.org. So you guys, there's actually a couple of free gifts on there if you guys want to go there. I have a free transaction list. So like a list where, when you get something, under contract, you have to do all your due diligence and all the way through to refinance. So it's like a checklist. So you could download that, and as well as I have like a partnership assessment form. And then there's like a 20-minute webinar as well, with some more real estate content. So go to farrahali.org on my website and you'll get some free gifts. And then to reach me personally, you can just email me at REI, so REI, the letters, at farrahali.org. And you can reach me, and then, I'm usually checking my emails, a couple times a day. So if you reach out to me, I will respond to you.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Farrah. So again, thank you, Farrah, for sharing your experience and expertise. It's very inspiring and motivating to hear from someone who really did it and started from nothing, then was able to scale up your business. It also means the rest can do it as well. So we just need the right people we just need the right people, platform, and education about real estate. So Farrah, you are phenomenal, and I commend you for your time and encouragement you have given today. Thank you so much for your support to Chicago DealVault as well, and it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, everyone, for joining tonight's webinar.
Y'all have a good night.
You too. And in case you don't have access to Chicago DealVault, for the rest of those who are here tonight, we'd like to offer you 30 days free trial. We have shared to you in the link about how to access Chicago DealVault. So here is the how Chicago DealVault looks like for those who don't have access yet. You have access to MLS, off-market properties, the rest of the off-market properties here. We do have list of private lenders, cash buyers, and a lot more features that we can offer. We also provide 30 days free trial for you to be able to know how the system works. Also, I'd like to invite you to attend our Inner Circle meetings. So we do have meetings for Inner Circle. We have Cash Flow Inner Circle and Wholesale Inner Circle. So feel free to send us an email to support@ChicagoDealVault.com. Again, that's support@ChicagoDealVault.com if you wish to attend at least one meeting for free for either Cash Flow Inner Circle or Wholesale Inner Circle. It's Hugo who does the education training and classes every Sunday at 1 p.m. So again, I would like to thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Farrah, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Bye-bye.